Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 NCPW Virtual Consumer Fair, sponsored by the State of Hawaii Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and the U.S. Postal Service. I'm Jackie Choi. I'm Jackie Choi, the Consumer Protection Education Specialist from DCCA. I want to thank you for joining us to celebrate our 18th annual National Consumer Protection Week event. We're excited to celebrate NCPW with a series of consumer protection workshops that we had every day this week. So, to help our consumers be well informed about various consumer issues, we're offering a free consumer wise information packet containing an assortment of consumer protection brochures. So, if you'd like to receive the free packet of brochures, please email education@dcca.hawaii.gov. If you'd like the soft copies, please indicate you'd like the zip file, or if you'd like the packet with hard copies, please, when you email us, indicate your mailing address. Our director is a big supporter of consumer education. She's here with us today to say a few words. So please allow me to introduce to you the director of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Ms. Catherine Awakuni Colon.
Thanks so much, Jackie. Aloha, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, really excited to participate in the National Consumer Protection Week. I'm happy that we've had so many great speakers. Again, Jackie has been recording all of the sessions with the exception of one, and we will be able to share those on our website next week. I am happy that we have kind of a breadth of different topics to share with folks so that you can think about being a savvy consumer in so many different ways. How you deal with different kinds of email issues and internet issues as compared to tax issues and those kinds of things. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to participate and help us, think about how to protect ourselves. Thank you to the United States Postal Service, who helps to sponsor the program with us. And thank you to Jackie Choi, who is really the powerhouse of consumer protection education at DCCA. So thanks, everybody. And thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Kat. So I'm sorry to say that our speaker today couldn't be here. He was called away on an emergency, so we're not going to have him here in person. He did do our 2021 NCPW workshop, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to share that with you at this time.
Hey, Jackie.
Oh, yes.
Hi, this is Duke, and I'd like to reiterate what your director said. Thank you for all of your years of putting our National Consumer Protection Week events together. And I apologize for Brian missing today's event. He got called away at the last minute. That's sort of the nature of his job as a postal inspector. But what I would like to do, a brilliant idea by you to kind of show his presentation from last year, but I also would like to put in the chat a link to the Postal Inspection Services website, which has mail fraud prevention tips. So I'm going to send it out right now so that everyone will have that available as a resource, and it's updated and it has information that is valuable for everyone.
Great, thank you, Drew. We do have Duke Gonzalez with us. He is with the Postal Service. He has been a partner with NCPW for the last 18 years, and we appreciate having him with us. In fact, I have to say that he was the brainchild behind having an NCPW celebration. We started off with 2 tables at the airport location, and it was so small because we had 2 tables. And for the last 16 years, we did an in-person event at DCCA in the courtyard. I'm sure some of you have been there. And it's just been a wonderful event where we put together about 30 to 35 organizations that come together every year to share their expertise about their organizations and how they can protect our consumers. The last two years, we've had a virtual event, and that was just a change because of the times. So we're very happy to have the USPS partnering with us in this event. This is my last time facilitating the NCPW events for DCCA, and I'm sad to leave, but I'm just so happy for all of the accomplishments that the NCPW has done over the years. So, and I hope this continues for twice as long or even longer. So, and I want to thank Kat for being so supportive of the event and keeping this going for the last 18 years. So without further ado, let me share the presentation that Brian did last year for us.
And if you can send out the link to Brian's previous presentation, that would be outstanding. Hey, there you go. We can hear it.
For your time and
Can you hear it?
to Jackie Choi with the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs for inviting me on today. My name is Brian Shaughnessy. I'm a United States Postal Inspector here in Honolulu. I've worked my entire career here with the Postal Inspection Service. It's been 14 years that I've been here for. And we are the federal law enforcement arm of the Postal Service. So we're federal law enforcement agents. We carry firearms, we make arrests, we execute search warrants and arrest warrants of any crime that involves the mail or the Postal Service. So our jurisdiction is quite wide in its breadth. It's our main crimes here in Hawaii are people stealing mail, people sending narcotics through the mail, as well as different financial crimes, credit card fraud, fraud against financial institutions, other types of document fraud like passport fraud, for instance, distribution of child pornography. So essentially any crime that involves the mail in furtherance of the crime or the scheme, we can get involved in and we can have jurisdiction over. So I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation today of a topic that is very important here in Hawaii, and it's a certain type of financial exploitation of the elderly that is unfortunately quite rampant in our state, and that's foreign lottery scams. And they were a problem when I came here in 2007. They've continued to be a problem. The scam has evolved a bit over time. The mail has kind of moved more towards a catalyst for the fraud, not necessarily as it originates in, as now these scams start often now with phone calls or emails, as opposed to receiving letters in the mail, but they're still devastatingly effective. And we receive referrals from post offices across the state and local banks and other financial institutions here on about a weekly basis. And these are just the cases that we know about. And also these are cases that only involve the mail. So when you think about, to kind of put that in perspective to how much financial elder abuse is actually occurring in Hawaii, it's difficult to imagine. It's a lot more than we know of. We're quite certain of that. But if the mail is involved, if the mail is used in furtherance of the scheme, then we can get involved. So I'm going to begin my PowerPoint presentation now. Okay, so today we'll be talking, as I mentioned, about foreign lottery scams and what we're seeing here, how they're so effective, who they're taking advantage of, the specific methods that these perpetrators are implementing to defraud our local victims here. And just kind of a brief overview of sort of our mission in combating fraud. There's 4 main tenets to it. It's protection is basically protecting postal customers from these types of scams, making it more difficult for scammers to find and manipulate victims, preventing victimization, shutting these operations down, identifying the heads of these rings operating typically abroad, and extradite them to the United States for prosecution. The enforcement part is equally important. Enforcing the law, we have jurisdiction over approximately 200 federal laws relating to crimes that impact the mail, the postal employees, postal customers. And lastly is preparation. So doing things like this, increasing public awareness and educating other professionals with instructional presentations like this. So just to kind of give an overview of how these scams start, this presentation is tailored very much to Hawaii because it's the only location at which I've worked on this job, but also the scam is carried out very differently here than on the mainland. Hawaii victims of foreign lottery scams are almost always pure victims because one part of this scam typically involves the victim here sending cash or postal money orders to a middleman or a money mule on the mainland, who then wires the funds offshore, typically to Jamaica. And that money mule will often keep a portion of it for themselves. So we've seen typically the money mule starts as a victim, but then they actually can become a suspect and potentially subjected to federal prosecution. Just as my slide here says, just to kind of take it from the start, an elderly victim receives a mailing, an email or a phone call indicating they've won a foreign lottery. And these scams can manifest themselves in a couple of different ways. It's not always a foreign lottery. It can be a phony inheritance scam, promise of a new car, fixed income, or a free vacation. It's really the promise of anything that doesn't really exist, and the victim is told they have to pay money to receive their winnings or get whatever benefit is being promised to them. So the victims will, once the victim responds to this either unsolicited mailing or email or phone call, if it's in Jamaica in particular, now the perpetrators know they have potentially have a good victim for them, and that they actually have mailing lists over in Jamaica that get sold for quite a bit of money once they know they have a victim that is willing to send money and has fallen for the scheme. So they're instructed to send a small amount of money to some type of associate on the mainland. Of course, it's all bogus, to release their winnings. And while the scams are typically perpetrated from foreign countries like Jamaica or Nigeria and Great Britain, very rarely in Hawaii is the victim here requested to send the funds directly to that country. They are told to usually express mail the funds to the money mule somewhere on the mainland. And then from there, that individual typically wire transfers what's left of the money to the perpetrator offshore. This way, by the Hawaii victim, by them not mailing it directly to the suspects overseas, they don't have to deal with any type of customs issues or anything like that with the packages being searched by law enforcement. They use pressure tactics and intimidation over the phone, as we'll see in a couple of short videos later in the presentation. And as I mentioned, the envelopes are typically mailed to mainland addresses. And the dollar amounts in these overnight envelopes are often quite low. By keeping them under usually $3,000, the suspects know that the victim will not have to fill out any paperwork to comply with Bank Secrecy Act regulations, so it remains largely anonymous. Oh, these next couple of slides are going to be 2 short videos. The first one is from a CBS This Morning story of some of the pressure tactics these callers will use on the phone. And sometimes the calls are coming often from overseas, as we mentioned, from spoofed or fake phone numbers, so they're difficult to track. And Other times we've seen them actually coming from the money mules on the mainland who speak perfectly good English, just like anyone here. So it can make it seem a little more legitimate because they're just acting with at the instruction of the perpetrator overseas. And after this video, there'll be one more right after from a news story about how this typically ends for the victims losing their assets. But they were just some short video clips of news stories covered on the mainland about kind of what these calls usually sound like that are made to the victims, that the suspects can be very persuasive and very demanding, and they can psychologically intimidate the victims here. And the second video was about how these often end with the victim losing their home, losing their life savings. And one thing to note is with these cases, if you compare them, say, to other types of crimes, there are usually safety nets in place. Like, for instance, if somebody steals your identity and uses your credit cards, well, there are safety nets in place for you as long as you file the proper paperwork under federal law that financial institutions cannot hold you responsible for that fraud loss. With these foreign lottery scams, no such safety net exists. Once the money is gone, it's very difficult for us to recover it or for the bank to recover it. And that's what makes this scheme so particularly devastating. So this slide here, this is often what the victims' homes look like when we go there to speak to them. There is mail strewn about the residence. This is actually nothing compared to what we typically see here. This slide you're looking at, and we'll go through some of the red flags to look for if you start to see this kind of thing with a family member or a loved one. So some of the indicators that somebody may be falling victim to this scam. So as we looked at unsolicited mails piling up in the house is a very big red flag that something like this is going on. Unpaid bills despite having money. So we've seen our elderly victims kind of lose track of the rest of their lives because they're so obsessed with winning this, whatever they've been promised, a foreign lottery or sweepstakes or the new car. The one we had this week from one of the outer islands, the theme of the scam was they had won a new car and they actually had already sold their older vehicle they have, and they were expecting to receive the new car. Of course, there is no new vehicle, and they already had sent tens of thousands of dollars to a money mule on the mainland. Non-stop phone calls. Typically, often when we go to interview these victims, the entire time we're in the home, the phone is ringing. It's quite remarkable, and they just don't stop calling. And once they get with the Jamaican scams, once they get on those victim lists back in Jamaica, they get shared with other perpetrators, and so they're receiving phone calls from numerous individuals, all looking for the same thing, to defraud them of their life savings. As I mentioned, piles of mail, overnight or express mail receipts, wire transfer receipts. So in some of these cases, they're both sending mailings to the mainland, but they're also sending wire transfers to the suspects overseas as well. Presence of a large numbers of gift cards. Occasionally, the perpetrators will ask the victims to purchase gift cards, load money onto them, and then the suspect can remotely unload the funds from those gift cards from overseas. And another indicator too is the victim being distressed or reluctant to talk. If they're dealing with declining cognitive abilities, that's something we often see. And also unexplained new lines of credit. So once the victim has emptied their bank accounts, the suspects will often look for any other way to drain them of additional funds or assets. So as far as what we're doing about this, so as I mentioned, we will immediately respond to referrals we receive from post offices and financial institutions here. Because once we get involved, usually the victim has already lost a substantial amount of money. And our number one goal is, if we can, intercepting any mailings that are still in the mail stream on their way to the mainland. And we will work with our postal inspectors on the mainland, as well as often agents from other agencies like Homeland Security Investigations, for example, to try to freeze those assets before they get wired offshore. The mail fraud statute is one of the oldest federal statutes in United States Code. It's punishable by up to 20 years in prison. So these cases are very serious, and the statutes we have to work with are very significant, and they can carry large amounts of prison time. And the education part is, in involving family members, and is particularly effective. And we do make referrals to Adult Protective Services as well. And the biggest challenge for us often is earning the trust of these victims. They don't know us. We're showing up at their door. We're asking them to trust us after we've just told them that they've been defrauded. So sometimes they're thinking that we're part of the scheme as well. And that can be the challenging part, is sort of breaking through those psychological barriers to get through to them and convince them to stop participating in this scheme, hold on to their hard-earned savings and their assets, and to discontinue any association with these individuals. So some of the other prevention resources that are available to the public and to the community, at least here on Oahu within the city and county of Honolulu, the prosecutor's office here, since I believe 2008, they've had their Elder Abuse Justice Squad. So they prioritize cases involving felony crimes with victims 60 and older, with a dedicated unit that the deputy prosecuting attorney will keep the case throughout the entirety of the case through the courts. And they don't just handle financial exploitation of the elderly, it's also physical abuse, emotional, sexual abuse, caregiver neglect. And at least here on Oahu, the Honolulu Police Department has investigated some great cases in recent years involving cases where there was no male nexus, but say the victim and suspect were known to each other, like family members defrauding their parents or grandparents, or caregivers stealing from the elderly victims. On the federal side, the Department of Justice maintains the National Elder Fraud Hotline, and that number is on the screen. It's if anyone can't see it, it's 833-372-8311, and that is for victims age 60 and older. And the case then gets routed to the appropriate agency, and they don't just refer to federal agencies, they also will refer to state and local agencies as well. So it's another resource available to somebody who wants to report if they believe someone they know is being defrauded in this way. Continuing along the prevention angle here, we found that it's very effective for, once these victims are identified, they're sending money to the mainland. They don't want to believe it's not real. Forming a team to address the issue can be especially effective, whether it's family members, friends, neighbors, doctors, bankers. I didn't include law enforcement. That can be really important as well, to have essentially an intervention to try to convince them that once their money is gone, it's not coming back more than likely, and they could lose everything they have. And banks in Hawaii must report financial exploitation of elders 62 and over to Adult Protective Services and to their county police department. That's relatively new, I believe, over the past few years. And we've had several cases where, when we do involve family members, like children of the victims, they will obtain power of attorney to take over finances for their elderly family members, and that we've seen that be very effective as well. And our main goal is to, when we receive these referrals, is to get involved as soon as possible and try to stop the money from leaving the state or leaving the country. Some other prevention tips. This is information from the Federal Trade Commission, opting out of pre-screen offers for credit. There's a website I posted in the slide, as well as a phone number of 888-567-8688. I highly recommend this. Once you get onto that website, you have the option to opt out for either 5 years or permanently, and it's free. To try to cut down on the calls from telemarketers, donotcall.gov is a good website to visit, and you can register your phone number there, and that number is 888-382-1222. And to opt out of unsolicited mailings, Direct Marketing Association is the organization that handles that. Now, it doesn't cover all unsolicited mailings, but it does for a large portion of them. There is a small fee of $2 to opt out for a period of 10 years. So you'd have to renew it after 10 years if you want to continue to opt out of those unsolicited mailings. I did include a case here at the end. This is a foreign lottery case we had here, and as you'll notice, it was 2010. I had to dig back in the annals a little bit of our cases here, because these cases often aren't prosecuted here. These are where the victims reside. The money is going to the mainland, the money is going offshore, and the prosecutions are usually handled outside of Hawaii. This was one case. It was kind of a cautionary tale of somebody, and this individual now would be over 100. I'm not sure if he's still with us, but he did serve some federal prison time. But and I stole his picture from the Honolulu Advertiser, which doesn't exist anymore. So I think that's probably okay. It was before our newspapers merged over here. But this individual named Winfred Wong started off as a victim of a foreign lottery scam out of Nigeria. This was not a Jamaican one, but rather out of Nigeria. And he started off as a victim, and then these perpetrators in Nigeria realized that he had a lot of savings and a lot of money, and he was also a pretty well-connected individual in the community. So they used him to bring in more and more victims into the scheme, and they had him promising these false investments. He was committing document fraud, changing financial statements to make it look to local victims here that they were earning all this money, when in fact that their money was either going to the defendant, Mr. Wong, or was being sent overseas. So as you can see on the slide here, this was the total fraud exposure was approximately $7 million. And as I mentioned, he started off as a victim, but then evolved into a suspect. And once somebody starts benefiting from the scheme and they demonstrate that they are aware of what's going on and they're taking overt acts and obvious steps to defraud others, they're no longer a victim. They are now, in the eyes of the law, they're now somebody who is a subject, and they can be prosecuted. So he sent approximately $5 million overseas, and only some of that was his, but most of it was from other local victims here in Hawaii that he knew from previous business dealings or friends. And he was sued civilly here by several victims. I don't know if they were able to recover any of their money. My guess is most likely not. And he served over approximately 4 years in federal prison, and he was ordered to pay over $3 million in restitution. Whether he was able to or not, I don't know that, but this was a case that really kind of serves as a cautionary tale to somebody who initially loses money to these people, but then they realize that he can help them. He can defraud more people locally, and that's what happened in this case here. And the amount of mail in this individual's residence was absolutely staggering. I've never seen anything like it before, that was being sent to him from overseas. So this last slide here is just my contact information, our office number, my email, as well as our national 24/7 number, 877-876-2455. And I think just to kind of wrap up the PowerPoint, when looking at why these foreign lottery scams are so effective here in Hawaii, I think there are several factors based on the last decade plus of responding to these incidents. The elderly in general, not just in Hawaii, but I think all across the country, tend to be more trusting. They have a hard time imagining sometimes how somebody could carry out this type of scheme. With a lot of these victims, not surprisingly, we notice some pretty obvious decline in their cognitive abilities and their ability to sort of determine what's real and what's not. I think another factor too that plays into why this is such fertile ground for this type of fraud is so much of our elderly population, they reside in homes that have appreciated significantly over time, and thus the victim has access to equity that they can turn into cash if they're directed to do so. And we've seen that happen several times. As well as I think too, another factor is the sort of the distance to the mainland, if you will. The scammers, I often don't believe that law enforcement in Hawaii is going to trace all the way back to Jamaica or to Nigeria or even to the mainland for that matter. And that's simply not the case. We will track these cases. We will make the appropriate referrals to our counterparts on the mainland. And we do have postal inspectors stationed in Jamaica who will work with the authorities there to arrest these individuals and extradite them back to the United States for prosecution.
Thank you, Jackie, for arranging to have so many folks. Sorry that it was a little bit bumpy to begin. Thank you for being here with us, Duke, too.
You're very welcome. And as always, it's a pleasure to be a part of it, to partner with your organization, your agency, which is doing so much good work, important work in the communities, and to Jackie, who's been there for us for 18 years. And it's hard to imagine not having Jackie as a partner, but we do still hope to partner with your agency in the future and are available to assist you whenever we can.
I appreciate that. You know, I see Sherman has his hand up.
Can you send that the one that says it will stop the what do they call it, the scam mail? He put up a slide. I didn't get wasn't able to write down the address for to stop the unsolicited mail.
Yeah, I'll get that out to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Kat, for getting that running on your end. You know, and thank you all for being so patient with me today. Sorry about the delay. Thank you for joining us for the 2022 NCPW Virtual Fair, not only today, but all of this week. And, you know, I really wanted to thank all of our speakers for sharing their expertise today. I know Brian couldn't make it today because of the emergency he had to run off to handle, but the information that he had last year is so pertinent even this year. And, you know, so please check with the DCCA website. Sometime next week, we'll be getting up all of the recordings for the workshops. Again, if you'd like to have a consumer packet sent to you, please email education@dcca.hawaii.gov. Request a hard or soft copy. And, you know, again, I want to thank you all for joining us in celebrating our 18th annual NCPW Virtual Consumer Fair. And hope to see you guys next year, but I'll be on the other side. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Duke. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.